Good morning everyone. Welcome to the second class of ILP. We will be discussing national income today. Okay. In the previous module we have talked about the very basic things about economics, some basic concepts we have explained, so that moving forward you are able to catch up things in a much better manner. So national income is the topic that we are going to discuss today. Have you ever thought, in the sense, why some countries are very rich, that people are having very good amount of income, while some other countries are poor, right? So there are countries which are having a lot of wealth, a lot of people earning a lot of income, and there are poorer countries, right? So what can be the possible reason for this? I mean, why some countries are rich and why some are poor? See, these poor countries might be those countries which are having a lot of natural resources also. But despite having a lot of natural resources, still these countries are poor. So having resources is not itself is not a guarantor for wealth, right? Having natural resources itself is not a guarantor for wealth and income. It is about what do you do with that resource. It is about creating a flow of production from that resource and thereby generating wealth and income, right? So having natural resource itself is not a guarantee that you will be or you will become a wealthy country, a rich country. What you have to do, you have to create a flow of production. You have to create a flow of production to generate wealth and income out of it. So it is those countries which has created this flow of production which are comparatively richer. In national income, in this module, we will be interested in knowing the total flow of production or the final output, value of the final output of a country. So ultimately what we need to know here is the total flow of production or the final output, value of final output of a country. As I told you initially, it is this total flow of production. It is the flow of production which creates income and wealth for the country. So we are interested in knowing the total flow of production or the final output, value of final output of a country. Before we jump into the core theme, we should know a few basic things so that we are able to process what the concepts are. For example, we will be learning about GDP and all, but before we go into GDP, we should know a few basic things so that we are understanding things much better. Now, we have four factors of production, right? Factors of production are those things that are required for the production process, are required for the production of goods and services. So we have four factors of production. Take up the first one, land. Now this word land is a broader word in the sense that it is not the case that it should be strictly land. It can be natural resource also. It can be natural resource also. So it should not be strictly understood from the word land, but it has a broader meaning. It can be land or natural resources also, which is required for the production process to take place, for the production to happen. So for a farmer, obviously land itself is an input. For a company which is producing some other thing, any other natural resource can be the input, right? So this has to be understood in the broader context. Now what do you get in return of it? We will get return of rent. So in return for giving this natural resource or giving land, we get rent, right? That is what we are getting instead of giving that, in return for giving that factor of production. Now we need labor, right? For any production process to happen, we need labor, we need people who work, right? Assume that you are joining a particular company, be it a manufacturing company or a service based company. You are giving your labor. It can be a physical labor, or it can be your let's say your intellectual capacity. You are giving your labor to that company. In return, what you are getting? In return, you are getting wages, right? So if you give labor as the factor of production, you get wages in return. Now capital. So see, capital also, typically the typical notion of capital is money, right? But here you have to understand it from an economics viewpoint. Here it is not directly about money, because see, money is not directly involved. It is indirectly involved in the sense it enables the entrepreneur or owner of the company to buy capital goods for production. So by capital we generally mean the physical capital goods. Okay, I said money is an indirect thing. Yes, obviously money is required, but money is an indirect thing, in the sense money enables the owner of the enterprise to procure physical capital goods like machines and equipments. So here we basically mean the capital goods. Okay, not money in the direct sense. So what, obviously for buying the equipment, as I said, you need money. So what do you get in return for giving capital? The return is called as interest. Now you are an entrepreneur. You are going to start a company tomorrow, right? What do you expect in return? You might expect mental satisfaction. Maybe you might expect, but more than everything you expect something called as profit, right? So this profit is the return for the entrepreneur, for the entrepreneurship. So these are the four inputs that go into the production process to make the production process happen, the four factors of production, and each and every one will have its return. For the land or natural resource, we have rent. For labor, we have wages. For capital, we have interest. For entrepreneurship, we have profit. Understood clearly? So let's move forward. Now all of these factors have come together. All of these factors have come together and they are producing something. So this is the firm, right? The entrepreneur has come, right? He has come. He is running the firm. You have land or natural resource. Then what other thing you have? You have capital. Right. Then obviously labor. So all these factors have come together and this firm is producing what? Final goods. Right. So when all these factors of production come together, the firm produces the output of final good. Now what is final goods? I mean, we should know the definition of final good. An item that is meant for final use and will not pass through any more stages of production or transformation. So the final good will not go through any more stages of production or transformation and it is meant for final use. That is what final good is. So it is out of the active economic flow. Somebody has bought it and he is going to use it. It is not going to get transformed by the action of any producer. but obviously when the consumer use it, it might undergo changes, but it is not going to undergo any transformation at the hands of a producer anymore. The consumer can obviously use it, it might undergo some changes, but at the end of the producer, no. So it is out of the active economic flow. So an item that is meant for final use and will not pass through any more stages of production or transformation is called as the final good. In the final good only, we have two types of goods. One is capital goods and the other is consumer goods. So what are consumer goods? See, by the name itself you can easily identify what are consumer goods. What are consumer goods? That is actually meant for the immediate consumption or meeting the immediate need of the consumer, the customer. For example, food, clothing, right? These are all consumer goods. When we say goods, actually it is also involving services, okay? It should be understood as services also. There are goods as well as services, consumer goods and services also. So it is something that is meant for the consumption, for meeting the need, immediate direct need of the purchaser. So example can be food, clothing and all, right? In the consumer goods only, we have two categories. One is durable, the other one is non-durable. The word itself again explains durable as something that will last. For example, home appliances and all. You buy a washing machine, right? You buy a TV or you buy a computer for your home. These are all durable goods. It will last for some time. What are non-durable? Which are immediately consumed. For example, food, right? You immediately consume it. So it comes under non-durable goods. Understood? Now what are capital goods? Capital goods are those goods which aid in the production of other goods. For example, machines, tools and everything. So what do we use a machine for? What do we use a tool for? We use it to produce another good, right? But here the capital good, obviously it's a final good. Why? Because it is not undergoing any transformation or any stages of production. Obviously it will have wear and tear, right? When we use a particular thing, it will have wear and tear, but it is not undergoing any transformation or it is not undergoing through any stage of production as such. It is used by a firm to produce the other goods. So capital goods are those goods which aid in the production of other goods. So machines, equipments, tools and all will come under capital goods. Now to make you understand the importance of capital goods, I will give you a situation. A country is producing 100 goods, okay? Let's say the country is producing 100 goods, out of which 99 goods are consumer goods and only one, these are consumer, okay? These are consumer and this is capital. Only one good is capital good. Now capital goods, as I told you, is required for the production of other goods. This economy is just producing one capital good. Now do you think in the future this economy can expand and grow? Do you think that this economy will be able to produce so much of goods in the future? It will have very limited capacity, right? Because capital goods produced in the economy is very less. Without capital goods, how will you produce more goods in the future? Right? We need capital goods, we need machineries and equipments to produce more goods. Now, if you are producing very less number of machines and equipments, how will you produce more goods in the future? Right? Now, assume the other way situation. The economy is producing 50 consumer goods and 50 capital goods. This economy has the potential to grow in the future in a very large manner because it is producing a lot of equipments and machinery which can be used in the future to produce a lot of goods. So there lies the importance of manufacturing capital goods. Understood? Clear? Now, not all the goods are final goods. There is one more category of good which is called as intermediate goods. So what are intermediate goods? Intermediate goods are goods used to produce a final good or finished good for the purpose of selling it to the consumers. Right. Example, let's take a baker, one who produces bread. Okay, so there is a baker, he is producing bread, his final good is bread. Now he will need some intermediate goods, right? He will need some intermediate goods to produce the final good. So wheat flour can be his intermediate good. So intermediate goods are goods used to produce a final good or finished good for the purpose of selling it to the consumers. Now I will make it more clear so that you are able to distinguish in a much better manner. See here the table. So we have already told final goods are those goods that do not require further processing, right? It is out of the active economic flow. It does not require any further processing and are ready to use for either consumption or investment. Consumption means consumer goods, investment means capital goods, right? Because we had two types, consumer goods and capital goods, right? So they do not require any further processing, not at all required. Intermediate goods are goods used to produce a final good or finished good for the purpose of selling it to the consumers, right? They are used to produce the finished good or the final good. Now final goods are included in the domestic income as well as national income. Intermediate goods are neither included in the domestic income or national income. This particular point, we will talk about it in a while. Okay, come to the third point. As I told you, this final goods have actually are out of the active economic flow. It has finished its production, right? It is meant for the final use. But intermediate goods are present within the production boundary. In the sense, it will undergo further transformation to become a final good. No value has to be added to the final good because they are ready to be used. No value addition is required. Some value has to be added because, as I told you, it has to be further processed. It will be transformed, further processed. It will undergo various stages of production to become the final good. Example is given: butter purchased by a consumer for consumption, equipment for investment. For butter, if you are buying for your home, obviously it is a final good, right? Kind of consumer good. Butter used by a baker for further production. Here the baker is buying it for further production. In the sense, it will undergo value addition, it will be transformed to make a final good, right? So that is the example of final good and intermediate good. Always understand, it is in the economic nature of use. It is in the economic nature of use that a good become a final good or an intermediate good. The most commonly used example, I will tell it for you, even in NCERTs it is mentioned. So assume the case of tea leaves. If you are buying tea leaves for your home, it is a final good, right? It is out of the active economic flow. Obviously, at the end of the consumer, it will undergo changes, but that is not the point. The point is that you are using it for your consumption. It is a final good. You are buying tea leaves for your home. Tea leaves, you are making tea out of it and consuming it at your home, right? So it has become the final good. Now same tea leaves, if a restaurant is buying, it becomes an intermediate good because they are using the tea leaves to produce tea to sell it to the customer, right? So tea leaves becomes an intermediate good here to produce tea which is sold in the market, right? To produce tea leaves, the restaurant will buy, they will produce tea which is sold to the customers. So their tea leaves become an intermediate good. So it is in the economic nature of its use that a good becomes a final good or an intermediate good, right? Clear? Now moving on, we have told that intermediate goods, in the previous slide we have told that intermediate goods is not included in the national income or the domestic income, right? So we told when we are considering the national income, obviously what we are trying to find out is the value of the final output, right? We are trying to find out value of final output when we are actually trying to measure the national income. Value of the final output is what we are trying to find out. Now, why are we not adding intermediate goods in it? Because assume that you are buying a packet of biscuit. Assume that you are buying a packet of biscuits. That biscuit packet will, the rate of that, the final market price that you are giving to the shopkeeper to buy that biscuit, the final value of that biscuit already contains the value of all the intermediate goods, right? For example, refined wheat flour. Most of them are made of maida. Some can be made of wheat itself. Sugar will be there, right? Oil will be there. All are these intermediate goods. These, all the value of intermediate goods are actually counted to give you, to make the final price, right? So whatever you are paying for the biscuit includes the prices of all these intermediate commodities. Understood? Now, if we are counting biscuit and along with it we are counting wheat flour or maida, we are counting sugar, we are counting oil, it becomes double counting, right? It becomes double counting. Why? Because already in the price of biscuit, let's say the price of biscuit is 20 rupees, already in this price the value of all these intermediate goods are included. Now if you separately add the price of this, becomes double counting. So in order to avoid it, we will not be including intermediate goods in calculation of national income. Investment. Let's clear some more basic concepts before we come to our final goal of calculation of national income. Investment. What is investment? See, we have a typical understanding or a common man notion of investment which is not applicable here, okay? Investment is the part of final output which comprises of capital goods. Okay, so let's say an economy produces these many goods. So these are the goods, total goods produced by an economy, produced by a country in a year. Okay, then what is the gross investment? Gross investment, let's say Y is the capital good, X is the consumer good. Now, this portion of the final output, which comprises of capital goods is called as gross investment. Understood? So in this bigger circle you can see so many X and so many Y. X are consumer goods and Y is capital good. Now what is gross investment? Gross investment is the part of final output. Part of final output comprising of capital goods. That is what gross investment. The term investment has a very specific meaning in economics. It is a bit different from what the common notion is, right? So here we have defined gross investment. Now let's take a situation. We have a firm or a company called as ABC. Okay. So this is the only firm in the country. This is the only firm in the country. It has, let's say, 10,000 rupees worth capital good with it. Basically machines, equipments, tools to produce, to enable the production. So this is the only firm in the country and it has 10,000 rupees worth of machines, tools and equipments. Now this factory, this firm ABC produces two kinds of goods. First is, let's say, consumer good. One kind of consumer good is produced. Let's say the value is 100 rupees. Second is capital good. So this factory produces both kind of goods, okay, capital and consumer good. So the value is, let's say, 50 rupees. Now what is the total value of production? What is the final output? It is 150 rupees. So let's say 150 rupees. Assume that this is happening in a year. Okay. So 100 rupees of consumer goods is produced and 50 rupees of capital goods is produced in a year by the company called as ABC. So final output is 150 rupees, worth 150 rupees. Now we have defined gross investment. What was it? Gross investment is that part of final output which is comprising of capital goods, right? So here what will be the gross investment? The gross investment will become 50 rupees, or when we express in terms of percentage, 50 by the total value of production. How much it will come? This becomes the gross investment in the economy. Understood what is gross investment? Now we have told that the factory ABC has 10,000 rupees worth of capital goods with it. But as it produces the 150 rupees total worth of goods, it is undergoing wear and tear. The capital goods, the machines, tools and equipments is undergoing wear and tear, right? So there is a loss because of this wear and tear, which is accounted through depreciation. So depreciation, the concept of depreciation comes into picture, which in basic symbol words is consumption of physical capital. So what we have said, for producing for producing 150 rupees worth goods in a year, the factory's machines and equipments has undergone some wear and tear. We have to account for that. So we have brought in the concept of depreciation, okay, which in the most basic sense is the consumption of physical capital. So what will be the net production of capital good? So the net production of capital good will be calculated after accounting for loss of that physical capital, that is depreciation. So assume that 50 rupees is lost because of wear and tear. So the net production of capital goods or net production of capital goods, or basically net investment, how much it will become? So let's say this is not 50 because our capital goods is only worth 50. So let's put it as 20 rupees. Right. So what will be the net? The net production of capital goods or net investment will be 50 rupees minus this 20 rupees. Understood? So the factories, machines, equipments, basically the capital goods that is with the factory will be undergoing wear and tear because of continuous usage, right? So we have to account for that. Here in this example, the ABC factory has lost 20 rupees worth of its capital goods because of wear and tear. So when we have to calculate the net production of capital goods or net investment, we will be reducing that value from gross value. Understood? So let's define depreciation in a better way. So as we told, monetary value of an asset decreases over time due to use, wear and tear or obsolescence. This decrease is measured as depreciation. Understood? So net investment, gross investment minus depreciation. Depreciation is basically, as we explained, consumption of capital goods. Now let's come to the topic, the main thing that we have to explain, which is GDP. How will we explain GDP? GDP is the total final value of goods and services, total final value of goods and services produced within the domestic territory of a country in a specific time period. Usually this is year. The specific time period is usually an year. So what is GDP or gross domestic product? It is total final value of goods and services produced within the domestic territory of a country in a specific time period. Or it measures the aggregate production of final goods and services. It measures the aggregate production of final goods and services taking place within the domestic economy during a year. So note the keywords: final goods and services taking place within the domestic economy. So that is what gross domestic product is. Now GDP can be calculated in multiple methods. Okay, so GDP can be calculated in multiple methods. To understand that better, we will be presenting you the simple version of an economy. Okay, so in the next section, we will talk about a simplified economy to make you understand the circular flow of income and different methods of calculating GDP. Now, assume that there are only two sectors in the economy. In the earlier class, we have told in an economy there are four sectors. Which all were they? Household sector, the private sectors or the firm, the government sector and the external sector. Now in the simple economy, there is only two sectors. First one is household, second one is firm. So there is no other sector in this economy, and this is a very simplified version to make you understand the circular flow of income and different methods of calculating the income. Now firms are there, households are there. Let's say the firm is producing, let's say burger. Let's say the firms are producing burger or samosa or whatever it is. So let's say it is producing, this is the thing that is produced by the firms. Now for this production, what are the households providing? What are the households providing? They are providing the factor services, right? So households are providing the factor services. You can see the factor services given by the households to the firms. Now as you know, for factor services, whatever labor that you give, whatever capital that you give, whatever land or natural resource that you give, whatever entrepreneurship that you give, there is a return, right? So for the contribution made by the household for the production, firms will be giving them factor payments. What will be those factor payments? It can be in the form of wages, right? rent, then profits, because even the entrepreneur is from the household only, so profit will go for him, then interest. So we are assuming that all the factors of production, all the factor services is required, that is required for the production is given by the households. So the firms will be paying them back for their services, that is factor payments. They will be getting wages, rent, profit and interest in return. Now whatever they earn here, the households has only one way of spending, because there is no savings and all, right? There is no savings, there is no other sector, they are not paying taxes because there is no government only. So there is no savings in this simplified model, there is no taxes, there is only one way to spend the money that they receive, that is buying the goods and services, right? So households will be spending that money, whatever they receive from the firm, to buy the goods and services. So here we can understand that this 100 rupees, this is the GDP, right? Burger is the total final value of the output, right? We have just now read the definition, total final value of goods and service, right? That is the total final value, because the burger is the only good and 100 rupees is total final value, right? So 100 rupees is the GDP here. This entire money is flowing between these two sectors in a circular manner, right? Understood? So whatever the GDP is here, whatever the total final value of the output, it is flowing through these sectors only. It is not leaking anywhere, because we have assumed a simplified economy. Understood? Now this 100 rupees itself is distributed among these households, right? They will be earning as wage, rent, profit and interest. Assume that instead of 100 rupees worth burger, the economy is producing now 200. Now the same 200 will be distributed in these households only, right? As wages, rent, profit and interest. So as the value here it is increasing, the income these people are earning, the income that they are getting is also increasing. Understood? Now to give you a better perspective, this is the goods and services market, right? Goods and services are bought and spent. Here it is the factor market. The factor services are bought and the return is given. Now I told this let's say 200 rupees is the GDP, because that is the total final value of the output, right? That is the value of the final goods and services produced, that is the GDP. Now we have marked 3 points here. Point number A, point number B and point number C. Now no matter which point you measure, you are going to get the same value for GDP, 200 rupees, right? So let's say we are measuring at point C first. This is point C. This is the income, right? Households are getting income because they are paid by the firm for the services they have contributed. Now this becomes the income method for calculating GDP. This becomes the income method for calculating GDP. Understood? Now coming to point B, if we measure the money flow, right? Whether we measure it at C, B or A, we are measuring the money flow. So if we measure the money flow at B, which is obviously going to be same only, what is happening at point B? The households is purchasing goods worth 200 rupees, right? So it becomes the product method or value added method. Product method or value added method, because here we will be calculating the, or we will be giving the value of that good to the firm, right? We will be giving the value of that goods, we will be giving the value of that product to the firm. So here if we measure this method, we will be calling it as the product method. Now coming to point A, it is about the spending received by the firm. So the aggregate spending received by the firm, if we are calculating in that way, it becomes the expenditure method. So at point A, we are measuring the aggregate spending that is received by the firm. This method becomes the expenditure method. Now, to recap things quickly, we have understood that the same amount of money is flowing across both the sectors. Now, no matter where, at which point we measure the money flow, it is going to be same. So, to summarize, to calculate the total final output, we can measure it at any of the 3 points. So depending upon how you are doing it, which method you are opting, you get 3 methods. The expenditure method, which is about the aggregate spending received by the firm, the aggregate spending received by the firm. Then you have product method, which is about the aggregate value of the goods and services that the household is buying from the firms. Then the income method, which is basically about the income received by the households from the firms. So no matter at which point, point A, point B or point C you measure, it is going to be the same. So what have we learnt? We have learnt that 3 methods are there to calculate the GDP. First is the expenditure method, second is the product method, and third is the income method. So that is it for the day. In tomorrow's class, we will be discussing about each of these methods. We will be discussing about the expenditure, product and income methods, how calculation will be taking place, and we will be further explaining the concepts of GDP. Thank you.